Hello, welcome everyone to this Global Positive Health Institute podcast series on positive psychology, lifestyle medicine, and healthcare. And I'm Dr. Lianov. I'm the president and founder of the Global Positive Health Institute. And today I'm delighted to have with us Kristen Pascucci, and she is a board member of the GPHI. And also for quite a number of years, she's been a leader in corporate human resources at a financial institution, a leader in training and institutional development. She's also been a faculty of a couple of courses with the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. And we share so much in common in terms of our passion for changing our health and well-being, helping our colleagues really promote the health and well-being with positive psychology, lifestyle medicine, and so much more. And she has really the perspective from the workplace. And so I'm looking forward to hearing that as well. So welcome, Kristen.
Thank you, Liana. I'm excited to be here.
All right. Well, what got you interested in this topic?
Well, I think it might be kind of a unique story. As you mentioned, I've been in corporate HR, corporate human resources for so many years. And I'd say probably about, I think it was 2007, 2008, around that time, my organization was partnering with Gallup Organization. And we had, built a culture within the organization around strengths. And so we partnered with the Gallup Organization and brought the StrengthsFinder, which for some listeners, you might be familiar with the BIA strengths. It's kind of a similar thing, but owned by Gallup. And employee engagement, which, that all kind of intertwined together. And so I became one of the champions within the organization around using strengths at work and how that impacts our employee engagement. And through that, I became really immersed in, wow, these strengths are awesome. I didn't even know that was a thing. So I started researching it, and I, started looking a little bit more into Gallup, and I came in contact with Shane Lopez. He was one of the researchers. Back then it wasn't even that big of an industry or, a research topic back then. And he partnered with, I think it was Rick Snyder, Martin Seligman, some of the big names, Csikszentmihalyi, I always butcher that name. So I ended up partnering with them and the Gallup Organization, and Gallup brought myself and some other, I was a PhD student at the time, and they kind of brought us into a think tank, and we were developing strengths products, doing some research. They took us to conferences. So I got to meet all the awesome, in my mind, I was like starstruck with meeting all these people, but really Shane helped shape me in that way. And he ended up being on my dissertation committee. So Gallup ended up sponsoring my entire dissertation. And so I got to use all of their tools and resources, and Shane included, and I was able to use the StrengthsFinder in my research. And so through that, I just became completely immersed in it. Shane became one of my professional mentors for many, many years, even after that. And a lot of his work was around hope and, future orientation. And, it just kind of grew from there. And then I ended up, where I am today, working with American College of Lifestyle Medicine and seeing how the lifestyle medicine pillars impact positive psychology. And then I meet you, and it was a match made in heaven.
Well, you were so fortunate to work with such luminaries. We gather, and I work on gathering the classic science as well as the most recent science in this area on health and well-being and positive psychology. And so those are some big names. And so you were fortunate to learn from the best. And that's very exciting. We just before we started this recording, we were talking about our shared humanity and how all of us run into bumps ask, well, how do you apply this in your own life?
Well, I have to say, ironic, just side note, Liana, you're frozen. Can you see me? And can you hear me? Hmm. I can't hear you. If you can hear me, I can't hear you, and you're also frozen. So I'm not sure if I'm frozen or not. There you are. Okay. Can
The internet went down. It's okay.
Okay. I think I know what question you were at, though. You were at the second question.
Okay, I'll repeat the second question so we can. Yeah.
Okay. Got it. Was I frozen, by the way, or was it just you?
Yes. Yeah, you were frozen.
I was. Okay. Perfect. Okay.
So right before we got started on this recording, we were talking about our shared humanity. It's really tough to get through life without facing some of those bumps in the road where positive psychology, healthy lifestyles really can come in handy. So please share with us how you use it in your own life.
Well, it's a journey. Definitely not perfect in by any stretch of the imagination. I do have to say though, I kind of was doing a lot of positive psychology interventions before I even knew what positive psychology was. I've been doing yoga and meditation for over 20 years. I just ended up getting into that somehow, and I knew that made me feel good, so I just kept doing it. Nutrition, exercise, I go through phases. It's never really been a problem. I've always been interested in nutrition and eating healthy and all that. So, I found that after learning about the lifestyle medicine pillars, my problems are sleep and stress and also drinking water. I'm okay with nutrition, but for some reason I cannot get myself to drink water. I don't know why. So I started, kind of a little bit of a psychology motivation theories here, but my dad is actually a substance abuse and gambling counselor, and he was telling me about an addiction recovery method that he uses called mooring lines. Have you heard of that? Familiar with that?
I'm not familiar with that. Tell me more.
So mooring lines is like, the lines on a boat when you're docked, right? And in addiction, if, the addict, if they have these mooring lines that keep them sober over time. And if with those mooring lines go, get taken off the dock or whatever, then they could relapse.
Yeah.
So I was like, wow, that's really cool, because sometimes I feel like I might be drifting, like I'll go on a trip and all of my positive psychology, all of my interventions just go out the window. I'm like, oh, okay, now I have to start over. So then as he's telling me about that, I'm like, how can I apply that in a positive psychology intervention way and keep myself moored, using my mooring line? So it's kind of silly, but it totally has worked for me. I started thinking about, okay, what are my mooring lines? And that keep me on track. And that is, good sleep, yoga, meditation, drinking water, reading, that's one of the things. I've added time in nature to that. So I wrote down this list, and those what I consider my time in nature, or my mooring lines. And so over the period of the week, I track what I did for each day, and I try really hard not to be perfect, because I don't want to, get upset or discouraged that I'm not perfect. But then, like at the end of the week, if I'm feeling unmoored or feeling really good, I look back and I say, oh, okay, that makes sense, because we were out of town and I didn't take vitamins is another one. I didn't take my vitamins right. I kind of got off track with yoga or whatever. And so that really helps keep me on track. So that's just kind of a thing that I do. I try not to be too perfect, too hard on myself with that. I also have a couple other little tricks. So breathing, the 4-7-8 breathing. So as I mentioned before, sleep and stress are my lifestyle medicine struggles. And so breathing is one of the interventions, and that's one of the things you can do just without anyone even knowing you're doing it. So
and for the people in the audience who aren't familiar with that box breathing, can you elaborate on that?
Sure. So the 4-7-8 breathing is where you breathe in for 4 seconds, hold it for 7 seconds, and then breathe out for 8 seconds. And it drops your heart rate, helps you focus. No one knows you're doing it unless, you can also spread that as a positive intervention. And okay, everybody, we're stressed. Let's stop and breathe, So I'm going to show you this little guy. So
Aww.
It's this little breathing Buddha guy, and I'm going to turn it on. So it's green for 4 seconds, purple for 7 seconds, and then it goes blue for 8 seconds. So I just if I have a stressful call or something, I'll just put it on my desk, in front. Nobody knows it's even there. And subconsciously, you don't even have to count. So I could still carry on a conversation. So that's one of my little tools to help. And then again, my water bottle, it lights up and reminds me to drink water. And it's ridiculous that I have to have that. But even my kids, they'll be like, Mommy, your water bottle's blinking. You got to drink water. And it reminds me, and it connects to my Apple Watch. So I have all these things. But really, it boils down to the fact that, I know that I have these little things that I just need to tweak and get a little bit better at. So what are the tools that I can use to help myself be effective? And I think that not a lot of people want technology or things beeping at them and things like that, but it has definitely helped me. And especially with those mooring lines, that's kind of a daily life strategy that I use.
Well, I love that image. It's a very graphic image now that you've explained it, about having something to anchor you, tie you to so that you don't feel like you lose that connection, and you feel like you're losing control, that you feel more in control. So that's a lovely image, and very helpful. And certainly during difficult times, all of us can know that there are very simple things we can do, like what you described, the breathing, or just refocusing on ourselves and the very moment, and that helps us regain our balance as we move forward. Absolutely. So when I introduced you, Kristen, I was mentioning your extensive experience with workforce development. So share a little bit about how these positive psychology concepts, healthy lifestyles concepts come in handy in that arena.
Well, I think we need more of it. That's one thing. We could definitely use a lot more positive psychology and lifestyle medicine approaches in the organizations to, create a culture, a well-being culture for our employees, because we spend so much time at work, and, it could even be if you work remotely too, that is an environment that could either make or break a person, So if you're in the actual, physical workplace, is that environment conducive to, positive health behaviors, positive emotions, or is it the opposite? And so how can we create those environments, create a healthy well-being culture to support those well-being behaviors? Because, for example, there's the kind of the joke about having donuts in the break room, and, that's not really necessarily conducive to helping. Like, what if I have a goal to eat healthy, but then I go into my organization and I'm surrounded by, unhealthy behaviors, and the culture is, what if I'm trying to quit smoking and the culture is to go outside and everybody goes to have a cigarette, that's not a healthy environment, and we're not creating that supportive environment or peer and social support. So, I think it's really important for leaders in the organization to acknowledge that, and acknowledge that they they need to model the behavior. They need to, it's important to create that environment, allow the employees to be able to flourish. And, some of the other tangible things like, if you get an email at midnight, are you expected to reply back at 12:30 a.m.? That's not a healthy work environment, and it's definitely not helping our health. So that can contribute to stress, lack of sleep, burnout. We really need to model those behaviors. Can we bring in some positive psychology interventions into the workplace, like walking meetings, like, maybe ending a meeting 5-10 minutes early so people have a break before the next meeting. Make sure meetings aren't scheduled over lunches so people don't have to work at their desk. There's just all kinds of little things that you can do to build that positive psychology, well-being culture in the organization so people and employees can flourish, which makes them be more productive. But then that also, as we know, broadens and builds outward to their family, their friends, the rest of the organization. And I think it is a big undertaking, but there's small things that you can do to create those little moments of positive psychology without having to, revamp your whole entire workplace. So.
Yeah, well, what you're describing is a culture of well-being, which we need in every workforce. And we particularly have talked about it on this podcast in the healthcare settings, but it's in every setting. And so our senior leadership and our camaraderie, our coworkers need to be supporting that. And yet there are so many places that struggle with that. What do you think might be the biggest challenge and some solutions to moving forward with creating wonderful cultures of well-being everywhere?
Oh boy, if it were only that simple. I think I obviously I'm not in the healthcare setting, and I, don't have a healthcare background, but from an outsider perspective, what I've heard and hear consistently is time. So that's why we've tried to create, from a positive psychology perspective, what are little things that you can do, between seeing patients, even maybe having this on your desk. It's only, 4, 7, 8 seconds. But, I think social support is huge. You can bring that into the organization for free. I think leadership support is huge because, and it doesn't have to be the head of the organization or the head of the department. Even it could be a manager helping their employees, making it a safe space for them to create that environment and meet their health goals. And I think peer support is huge too, because you can, if I'm an employee in an organization that's not supportive of my healthy behaviors, maybe there's at least one other person there that I can either help support them or they can help support me, and then again, broaden and build. That kind of goes outward. But, it's a big picture problem, but there's little solutions that you can try to do as an individual, but leadership is kind of key. So to get leaders to see that, I think, is important.
Yeah, absolutely. Not only to serve as role models, but to actually really insist, take that leadership and insist that the kind of workforce that they are building is going to prioritize health and well-being and happiness of the employees.
Yeah, and modeling that. If you have a leader that's constantly doing things that's making their employees feel like they need to have these unhealthy behaviors, then that's not a good, reciprocal relationship there. So
yes, exactly. And at the GPHI, we value the science behind positive psychology and health and well-being. So we've been collecting beautiful studies that have been ongoing. We have some interesting meta-analyses that show how these kinds of positive psychology interventions can impact individuals in a number of settings. Also can impact healthcare settings and individuals who are struggling with medical illness, et cetera. And but we have so much more research to do. And I always I'm the first one to say we need more research specifically in healthcare settings, not even in outside of mental health settings. So there are primary care doctors and lifestyle medicine practices and other specialty practices can fully integrate. But in everyday life and in self-care, we can integrate. And so I've been adding this, what I call kind of a wicked question to our podcast, to our guests to ask if the sky's the limit and you could have one research question answered that you think will propel us forward in really fully integrating the best of positive psychology, what would that be?
Oh my gosh, I have a lot of research questions in my mind. It's hard to narrow it down. But, we do have a lot of research on motivational theory, self-determination theory, self-efficacy, all of that kind of stuff, which is very interesting and that really helps shape our understanding around health behavior choices and things like that. But one of the things that, and there might be research out there that I'm not immersed in the literature. So if you know of anything, please let me know. But I'd like to know where do you pick up after the motivation goes away? So it seems to me like when I'm helping people change their healthy behaviors, I tend to see a lot of like excitement and motivation at the beginning and passion, like, oh my gosh, I'm going to change. And, that's where all those theories come in. And, I know that you can build certain behaviors to build like self-efficacy and, making small wins and goals and things like that. But then what I see is the motivation goes away when life happens. That's kind of where I got the mooring lines from, right? So I've helped a lot of people get started, and then you can't be with them all the time forever. So I'll talk to them, 6 months later, and, they're kind of back to their old ways. So I don't know what the actual hypothesis would be or what the research question would be, but my burning question is, how do we get these changes to be sustainable long-term? Because it's constantly a wave of motivation that, goes up and down. And I'd like to see some research on how to keep that.
Yeah, sustainability is the crux. And in fact, certainly in behavior change, we talk about that those are achieving a behavior and maintaining a behavior are two very different approaches and actually different areas of science. And it's hard enough to start one, but it's even harder to maintain any happy, healthy habit for sure. And that's actually what excited me so much about positive psychology, in that it is showing some of this early research that positive emotions can be the core driver of wanting to do a behavior over again, meaning that if we can really savor a positive experience and the positive feelings while doing something healthy, being active, eating right, or just doing the breathing, stress reducing kinds of exercises, gratitude exercises, and we pay attention to how it makes us feel during and after, then our non-conscious mind will take over, and we may find ourselves just doing it again and again without sort of like, I got to do it again, or without having the blinky lights on the water bottle. So that's the first light bulb I had. Clearly, there's so much more research to be done, not only in that area, but just in general, because it's more complicated than that. But certainly there's hope by focusing on those positive emotions.
And can you imagine what a world it would be if we could take everything that you just said and create that as a culture in an organization or, in your life? Then, I mean, that would be, talk about the perfect world.
Yeah,
that would be amazing.
That's the vision we've got.
Yeah.
We share, those of us on our board and advisory council and our broader community in healthy lifestyles and positive psychology and lifestyle medicine, is we want to move this science into the real world all the time for all of us, and acknowledging that actually we're going to expect all kinds of bumps in the road with our behaviors, challenges, stresses, and that actually that we can be even stronger in the face of that adversity by harnessing all of these constructs. And earlier you mentioned character strengths, and that's kind of what brought you into the field. And I often get asked that, well, what if everything is just falling apart and I can't do this and I can't take care of myself? I have no one to turn to. You also talked about social connections, that we can turn to ourselves and look inward and say, I've got some strengths in me to move forward. And that if we all feel that way, that adds to that culture of well-being. Mm-hmm. Hey, you've got something going on good for you. I've got something going on for me that's good, and we can support each other.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's the ticket.
And so I'm going to go ahead and start wrapping up. And I always ask our guests, what are some of your favorite resources? They can be podcasts, apps, books, articles that maybe some of our audience members don't know about, that we can turn them on to learn more on this topic.
Well, we talked about some of them, strengths. There's the VIA character strengths, strengths finders. Those are some really good tools to learn about yourself and how you can use those in your professional and personal life. But I also, and of course, Global Positive Health Institute is a great resource, right? American College of Lifestyle Medicine's a good one also. But I think also you could think more about your local library. There's tons of books there. I have a million books. Can't see them all back here, but one that I like a lot is by Shane Lopez, Making Hope Happen. That helps with building that vision for the future. The new book by Dr. Richard Safir, Cure for the Common Company, and also resource groups, employee resource groups within your own organization, or maybe creating your own resource group. That would be amazing, creating a well-being resource group within your organization. Look for volunteer groups, ways to build that social support, things that are free. Those are different things that you can do. And there's also some podcasts that I like too, but I couldn't list them all here, but and of course your podcast.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Kristen. And before we close, do you have one take-home message for our listeners you'd like for them to come away with?
Yeah, I think for ourselves, patients, healthcare providers, don't get overwhelmed. It's a journey. It's a marathon, not a sprint, all those, phrases, but take something attainable. Don't look at the lifestyle medicine pillars and say, oh, I need to be perfect at all of them. Don't look at, positive psychology and say, I have to do all these things. I have to do a journal, I have to have gratitude, I'll get overwhelmed. Just pick one or two things that are easily attainable for you or your patient, and focus on that and have some small wins along the way. And then that'll create your positive emotions, and, you'll go from there. And just don't get overwhelmed, and don't try to be perfect.
Boy, it's good to be imperfect.
Yeah.
All are. So that is back to where we started. Our common humanities, we're all imperfect, and we can embrace that. I always say that. And oftentimes also I get the questions like, positive psychology, does that mean being positive all the time? No. It means embracing all of what we are and all the emotions, and then being self-compassionate and moving as we're comfortable towards a more positive direction, a more productive and self-healing and self-helpful direction.
Yep.
So thank you so much for that advice and wisdom. Thank you for joining us today, and may have you back again as one of our board members as we evolve the GPHI. And thank you to our listeners for joining our GPHI podcast. Please subscribe to our channel, and we look forward to seeing you on another one of these podcasts. In the meantime, be safe, well, healthy, and happy. Take care, everybody. Until next time.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.